The moment you stop this conversation and walk away, the world will still be loud. People will still talk. Someone will still be ahead of you. Someone will still be behind you. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your entire life reacting to the noise instead of creating the life you were born to live. Here's the truth that will change everything for you today. The quality of your life is determined by where your focus goes. And most people are focused on the wrong damn thing. They're watching other people's wins, other people's failures, other people's opinions, other people's timelines, and while they're busy comparing, judging, and reacting, their own potential is leaking out day by day. If you want a breakthrough, if you want real momentum, if you want power back in your hands, you must learn this skill. Focus on yourself, not others. What you focus on, you become. This isn't motivational fluff. This is how your nervous system works. This is how your brain is wired. Whatever you consistently think about, whatever you emotionally engage with, whatever you rehearse in your mind, your body starts to move in that direction. Your decisions follow your focus. Your habits follow your decisions. And your destiny follows your habits. If you wake up every day focused on what other people are doing, what they have, what they said about you, why they're ahead, why life is unfair, your brain is trained to live in reaction. And a reactive life is a powerless life. You're always late. You're always catching up. You're always explaining instead of creating. But the moment you shift focus inwards, something powerful happens. You stop asking, why are they doing better than me? And you start asking, what can I do better today? That single question changes everything. Because now you're in control. Now your energy is moving forward instead of sideways. Focus is not just attention. Focus is emotional investment. When you focus on others, you give them your emotional energy. When you focus on yourself, you invest that energy into growth, discipline, skill, and strength. And energy invested compounds. Just like money, just like habits, just like belief. Most people don't fail because they're not talented. They fail because their focus is scattered. They check everyone else's life before they build their own. They measure their success by someone else's chapter 5 while they're still on chapter 1. And that comparison doesn't motivate them, it drains them. It creates frustration, self-doubt, and hesitation. Here's what high performers understand. Focus creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates action. And action taken consistently creates results. You don't need to know what everyone else is doing. You need to know what you are committed to becoming. When you focus on yourself, you begin to notice patterns. You see where you waste time. You see where you avoid discomfort. You see where you tell yourself stories instead of taking action. And that awareness is power because you can't change what you're not aware of. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean ignoring the world. It means mastering your response to it. It means saying, I'm responsible for my standards, my mindset, my effort, my growth. And when you take responsibility, you take control. Think about this. Every day you're training something. Either you're training confidence or insecurity, discipline or distraction, growth or excuses. And what determines that training? Your focus. Not your past, not your circumstances. Your focus right now. The most successful people on earth didn't win because they watched others more closely. They won because they watched themselves more honestly. They asked hard questions. They held themselves to higher standards. They focused on progress, not approval. So if you want to change your life, don't start by changing other people. Start by changing where you place your attention. Pull it back. Aim it inward. Strengthen yourself. Build skills. Raise standards. And when your focus becomes aligned with who you want to become, your life will start moving faster than you ever imagined. Focus on yourself and watch everything change. Comparison destroys momentum, and momentum is the force that changes lives. The fastest way to slow yourself down is to measure your journey against someone else's. The moment you start comparing, you stop creating. You stop moving forward with intensity, and you start hesitating, doubting, and second-guessing yourself. And hesitation is the silent killer of success. Here's what most people don't realize. Comparison doesn't just steal joy, it steals energy. Every time you look at someone else and think, they're ahead of me, or why don't I have what they have? Your brain shifts from action mode into judgment mode. And judgment never produces results. Action does. Momentum is built through consistent movement in one direction, but comparison pulls you sideways. Instead of taking the next step, you're looking left and right. Instead of building skill, you're building stories. stories about why it's unfair, why it's too late, why you're not enough, and none of those stories move you forward. The truth is, you never see the full picture of someone else's life. You see highlights, not habits. You see results, not the years of discipline, sacrifice, failure, and pain it took to get there. When you compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, you are guaranteed to feel inadequate. And that feeling kills momentum instantly. High performers understand something powerful. The only comparison that matters is who you were yesterday versus who you are today. That's it. That's the game. When you compare yourself to your past self, comparison becomes fuel instead of poison. It creates hunger. It creates urgency. It creates clarity. But when you compare yourself to others, you lose your pace. You either rush and burn out or you slow down and give up. You start chasing goals that aren't even yours. You try to live someone else's definition of success instead of designing your own. And when the goal isn't aligned with your values, motivation disappears. Comparison also destroys confidence. Confidence is built by keeping promises to yourself. But when you're constantly measuring yourself against others, you discount your own progress. You ignore your wins. You minimize your growth. You say it's not enough even when you're moving forward. And when confidence drops, action drops with it. Think about this. Every time you compare, you hand over control of your emotions. Someone else's success determines how you feel about your own life. That is not power. That is emotional dependence. And successful people refuse to live that way. Momentum requires focus, and comparison fractures focus. Your energy leaks out in frustration instead of being channeled into discipline. Instead of asking, what's my next move? You ask, why them and not me? And that question has no useful answer. It only creates delay. The most dangerous part? Comparison feels productive. It feels like awareness, but it's actually avoidance. It keeps you busy thinking, so you don't have to do the work. And deep down, you know it. That's why it feels heavy. When you let go of comparison, something incredible happens. Your speed increases, your clarity sharpens. You stop trying to impress and start trying to improve. You don't need validation because progress becomes your reward. And progress creates momentum. Momentum is addictive. Once you feel yourself moving forward consistently, you don't need to look at anyone else. You're too busy becoming. And when you're becoming, confidence rises naturally. Discipline becomes easier. And success stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like alignment. So if you want momentum in your life, stop asking where others are. Ask where you're going. Measure yourself by your standards, your effort, your growth. Because the moment you stop comparing is the moment your power comes back. Your energy is your most valuable asset, and most people are leaking it every single day without realizing it. Energy is not just physical strength. It's emotional drive. It's mental clarity. It's the fuel behind every decision you make, and wherever your focus goes, your energy flows. When you focus on others, what they're doing, what they think, how they judge, you're giving away the very thing you need to build your life. Think about this. You wake up with a limited amount of energy each day. You don't get a refill at noon. You don't get bonus energy because life is hard. Every thought you think, every emotion you entertain, every reaction you have costs energy. And when that energy is spent on comparison, resentment, approval seeking, or distraction, there's less left for growth, discipline, and execution. Most people feel tired not because they're doing too much, but because their energy is scattered. They're mentally everywhere, except where they are. Their body might be at work, but their mind is in someone else's life. Their heart might want progress, but their focus is stuck on criticism or validation. That internal conflict drains energy faster than hard work ever will. High performers are ruthless about protecting their energy. They understand that energy is what creates momentum. Without energy, discipline feels impossible. Without energy, confidence collapses. Without energy, even simple tasks feel heavy. So they stop feeding things that weaken them emotionally. They stop obsessing over opinions they can't control. They stop arguing with reality. And they stop giving their best energy to people and situations that don't earn it. When you focus on yourself, your energy consolidates. Instead of being pulled in 10 directions, it moves in one. And when energy moves in one direction, power is created. That's when you feel driven instead of drained. That's when effort feels meaningful instead of exhausting. Here's a hard truth. Not everyone deserves access to your emotional energy. Not every comment needs a reaction. Not every opinion needs a response. Not every comparison deserves your attention. Energy wasted on reaction is energy stolen from creation. and creators always outperform reactors. You don't need more motivation. You need less leakage. You need fewer emotional arguments in your head. You need fewer imaginary battles. You need fewer moments where you abandon your own priorities to focus on someone else's noise, because every time you do that, you weaken yourself. When your energy is protected, your standards rise naturally. You don't tolerate distractions as easily. You don't procrastinate as much. You don't negate with excuses. Why? Because you have enough energy to do what you said you would do. And keeping promises to yourself is the foundation of confidence. Look at your life honestly. Where is your energy going? Is it going into skill building, health, learning, execution? Or is it going into scrolling, comparing, worrying, explaining, and reacting? The answer to that question explains the results you're getting. Focused energy creates mastery. Scattered energy creates frustration. And frustration makes people quit. Not because they can't succeed, but because they're exhausted from fighting the wrong battles. When you focus on yourself, you reclaim your energy. You stop trying to manage how you're perceived and start managing how you perform. You stop chasing approval and start chasing improvement. And improvement gives you a return on energy that nothing else can. Energy is not something you find. It's something you protect. It's something you direct. And once you learn to guard it, to invest it intentionally, your life accelerates. You move faster, you think clearer, you act stronger. Not because life got easier, but because you stopped wasting the most valuable resource you have. Focus on yourself, protect your energy, and watch how quickly your power comes back. Growth requires personal standards, not external approval. The moment you rely on other people's opinions to define your worth, you give them control over your future, and most people don't even realize they're doing it. They say they want success, freedom, confidence, but their behavior is still shaped by whether someone claps, agrees, or approves. That's not growth, that's dependence. External approval is unstable. It changes with moods, trends, and convenience. One day you're praised, the next day you're ignored. If your motivation rises and falls based on that, your progress will always be inconsistent. Real growth demands something stronger, internal standards that don't negotiate with comfort or popularity. High performers live by a different rule. They don't ask, will people like this? They ask, does this align with who I've decided to become? That question creates discipline. That question creates identity, because when your standards are internal, you show up the same on good days and bad days. You don't need permission to work hard. You don't need applause to stay committed. Most people stop growing because they confuse validation with progress. They feel good when they're seen, not when they're improving. They chase attention instead of mastery. And attention is loud, but it's shallow. Mastery is quiet, but it's permanent. Personal standards mean you decide in advance how you live. You decide what effort looks like. You decide how you treat your body, your time, your word. And once those standards are set, emotions don't get a vote. Mood doesn't get a vote. Other people definitely don't get a vote. This is where confidence is really built. Confidence is not, I hop, they like me. Confidence is, I know I did what I said I would do. That certainty comes from standards kept in private when no one is watching. And those private wins create public strength. When you rely on approval, you shrink yourself. You play safe. You avoid discomfort. You hesitate to take bold action because you don't want to be judged. But growth lives in discomfort. It lives where you risk being misunderstood. And the people who matter long-term respect standards far more than approval seeking. Think about this. Every time you abandon your standard to fit in, you lose trust in yourself. And self-trust is everything. Without it, discipline collapses. With it, motivation becomes unnecessary. Personal standards also simplify life. You waste less energy debating. You waste less time explaining. You don't need to justify your pace or your priorities. You already decided who you are and how you operate. That clarity is freedom. External approval will never build the life you want. It's too fragile. It's too inconsistent. But personal standards compound. Every day you live up to them, you become stronger. Every day you honor them, your identity solidifies. And identity drives behavior automatically. So if you want real growth, stop asking the world for permission. Stop outsourcing your confidence. Decide your standards. Live by them. And let your results speak. Because when your standards are strong, approval becomes optional and your progress becomes inevitable. Mastery begins with responsibility. The moment you take full responsibility for your life, your power comes back. Not partial responsibility. Not I'll try if things improve. Full responsibility. Because as long as you blame circumstances, people, timing, or luck, you are giving away control. And you cannot master what you refuse to own. Most people want better results, but they don't want full responsibility for the actions, habits, and decisions that create those results. They want the reward without the weight. But mastery demands ownership. It demands that you look at your life exactly as it is and say, this is on me, and because it's on me, I can change it. Responsibility is not blame, it's power. Blame says, I'm stuck. Responsibility says, I'm in charge. And that mindset shift is everything. The moment you stop explaining why things happen and start deciding what happens next, momentum is created. High performers don't waste energy asking whose fault it is. They ask, what's my move? They don't deny reality, but they don't argue with it either. They accept it fast, then take action faster. That's how mastery is built, through consistent, responsible response. When you take responsibility, excuses lose their grip. You stop negotiating with comfort. You stop waiting for motivation. You act because it's who you are, not because you feel like it. And repetition of responsible action is what turns effort into skill, and skill into mastery. Responsibility also sharpens focus. You stop monitoring others and start managing yourself. Why? Stop reacting emotionally and start responding strategically. Every challenge becomes feedback instead of failure. And feedback is the fastest path to growth. Here's the truth most people avoid. No one is coming to save you. And that's not discouraging, that's liberating. Because if no one is coming, it means the power is already in your hands. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You need ownership. Mastery is not built in dramatic moments. It's built in ordinary days where you do the right thing when no one is watching, where you honor your commitments, even when it's inconvenient, where you choose growth over comfort again and again. And responsibility is the bridge between intention and result. The moment you fully accept responsibility, your identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone trying. You see yourself as someone who decides, and decision is the birthplace of mastery. So if you want to master your life, stop waiting, stop blaming, stop explaining, own where you are, own who you're becoming, and take responsibility for every step forward. Because the moment you do, you don't just improve, you transform.